I want to talk about building an app on Bubble. If you're trying to build a no-code app to start, support, or grow a profitable business, you have to listen because there's a lot of confusion out there. In these videos, I'm going to reveal critical strategies behind building an app on Bubble. And I'm going to show you how to use those strategies to customize your no-code app for whatever business you're in. All you need to do is sit back and watch, because these videos will help you understand Bubble and critical development techniques so you can build a better app. You might be wondering who I am to be telling you this, but I've been building successful apps on Bubble and teaching others to do the same so they can have a tool to help grow their business or even start a brand new one. What I've learned over the years of doing this is not only is building a no-code app an overwhelming process, especially if you don't have a technical background, but building an app on Bubble also comes with a steep learning curve that you might not be prepared for. That being said, I've also found that once people understand the step-by-step process of how to build an app on Bubble, they can confidently move forward with their app and repeat the process over and over again. Not only are we going to talk about the right way to build an app on Bubble, but we're also going to break it down in a way where you don't have to second guess yourself with every step you take. And instead, you can move forward with a crystal clear direction in your app building journey. Back when I first started building my own app, I was completely confused. I didn't have a technical background, and even with the promise of no-code app builders, I couldn't confidently figure out what my best options were. I landed on Bubble because I knew out of all the options out there, it gave me the most power. But at the time, there really wasn't a lot of learning material on not only how to approach building a no-code app, but how to efficiently use Bubble to do it. Because I knew Bubble could give me the power to help launch an app, I decided to dive in and learn everything I could. It took me years of trial and error to get where I am today. But at this point, I've now spent over 6,000 hours helping other people build their apps. And my business has even been featured in places like Startup Nation and Founder. Of course, most people don't have the time to put in that many thousands of hours just so they can learn how to build an app. So in these videos, I'm going to break down for you step by step the process I've used to build fully functioning apps clients and students have been able to pitch to investors, put in the hands of users, and even start or grow their very own business with. Now, to be honest, the strategy I use isn't really rocket science, but my guess is it's not the one you're currently using. It is one that has the power to change the trajectory of your entire app. But first, we need to talk about the one key thing that can make or break your app. See, Bubble was built to give people without a tech background the power to build nearly any app they want. But just like any new platform, Bubble still comes with a learning curve. So it can be frustrating to go from feeling ecstatic about finding this tool that could potentially save you tens of thousands of dollars in building your app, to feeling hopelessly defeated when you've tried to do something 10 times, 20 times, and it's still not working. But here's the thing, no matter how confusing it can be to first start, not only building an app, but building one on a platform with a learning curve that can feel intimidating and overwhelming, you can get the results you want if you simplify your approach. Because what I've seen time and time again is that people come onto Bubble, and instead of starting from square one when building their app, they jump right into square 10, thinking that they can skip everything in between. And I get it, trust me. After spending $20,000 for an agency to build my own app and getting a barely working product in return, I can guarantee you when I first found Bubble, all I wanted to do was be at the point of launching that app. But now, after years of building apps, I promise you that's a fast track to feeling like throwing the towel in and thinking maybe this whole app thing isn't going to work out after all. But you don't have to feel that way. See, that one key thing we talked about, that can make or break your app? It's all about putting down roots. I'm going to say it again. It's about putting down roots. Remember that, because it needs to be stuck in your mind from now throughout the lifetime of your app. Now, what do I mean when I say put down roots? I mean build a solid foundation for your app, a rock-solid core that'll give it the base it needs to go on to being a fully working business or business solution. Think of it like a house. If you find a plot of land with really hard dirt on it, you might think, what a perfect place to build my house. But let me ask you, that hard dirt feels like it'll support your house now, right? What happens when it rains? Or what happens when you want to build a second story onto your house and that dirt no longer supports the weight? It doesn't work, right? Of course not. That's why you have to lay a concrete foundation before building a house. Because if anything unexpected happens down the road, or if you ever want to build and expand upon your house, you'll be able to. Building a fully functioning app is no different. Without putting down roots, laying a foundation, you'll never be able to customize, build, and scale it later on. You won't be prepared to iterate, pivot, or make critical updates once you actually start bringing on users. So if you don't start from square one, and instead jump right into square 10, you're risking the longevity of your app. You're risking putting time, effort, and money into something that could come crumbling down with even the slightest change or update down the road. Now, let's talk about using a template or clone to build your app. Because if you're like a lot of new bubblers, that's one of the first places you looked to get you started. I want to start out by saying there can be a time and a place to use a template, but not in this scenario that we're talking about. Not when we're talking about building highly customized apps designed to be your business or business tool. I mean, think about it this way. Think about all the big name apps out there bringing in millions of dollars a year. Did they start out as a template? Of course not, because there's absolutely no way apps as unique and customized as those. I mean, think about the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Facebooks of the world. There's no way they can fit inside the mold a template gives you. And listen, if you've started out with a template, I promise I'm not saying this to frustrate you even more throughout this app building process. Because in all fairness, I've even put in my own templates on the Bubble Marketplace for anyone to use. If you have a simple app, or you don't plan to customize too much, or if you just want to prove a basic concept, templates can help speed up your process. They can even be a good learning tool when you're just trying to get a handle on things. But they don't leave room for the kind of customization you'll be doing with your app, because your app is different, right? It's not meant to be an exact clone of another app, because where does that get you? The idea you have for your app is unique and fully customized. That means building your app off a template or copying it piece by piece from another app is the exact same as building your house on dirt. It won't support added weight, and if even the slightest thing goes wrong, there's a good chance you'll have to end up rebuilding the entire thing anyway. I want to give you an example. I have a student in one of my courses who was building a staffing solution software to sell to hospitals. When he was first starting out, all he really needed was something that would prove his concept to get investors interested. And from there, he planned to widen his scope. So he found Bubble, realized it would be harder to build his app than he initially thought, and started looking for ways to speed it up. All he was thinking about was having something to pitch to investors. Naturally, he started looking for templates that would give him the base he needed. He was then going to build out the rest of his app from the template. The problem was this. Templates are pre-made based off popular apps and features. And again, while there can be a time and place for them, in this case, they were a hindrance rather than a help, because the only reason this student's app even had the potential of raising money was because the idea was different than other existing ones already on the market. That meant it had features and functionality templates just couldn't provide. Now, could he have found a template that maybe worked for a single feature of his app, just for the purpose of showing it to those hospitals? Maybe. But even then, he'd have to rebuild it from scratch anyway, because no template gave him a base which he could then build and expand on with his custom features. Think of it like using crutches when you break your leg. When your leg is in the process of healing, you use crutches to help you walk. But you can't run on crutches. You can't jump or do crazy flips or acrobats on crutches, right? They're a temporary solution that can be incredibly helpful in the right situation. But in order to have the full capability to run or jump, you have to rebuild your leg and stop using them. Okay, enough metaphors. The point is, this student quickly realized if he was going to pitch something investors hadn't seen before, he needed to start from square one and build a solid base, because only from there could he start expanding that base with customized features and full-scale functionality. I want to give you another example so we can dive into this concept more. Let's say you want to build a job board app where there are two types of users, companies and applicants. Those users can interact with dozens of different features. Maybe applicants can do things like save resumes in their profile, create cover letter templates, save their favorite jobs, and publish their contact info on their profile. On the other side, let's say companies can share their job listings via email or social media, automatically verify applicants on LinkedIn, search applications for keywords, and filter applicants for certain qualifications. Those are a lot of features, right? The question is, where do you start? Which feature comes first? What order do you build everything in? How do you even set up a database like that? And more importantly, how do you set it up now so you're not rebuilding it later when new features come into play? How do you build the front end of an app like that? And where do you connect all the working parts? Which tools on Bubble should you be using for these different features? Because there's usually more than one way to build something, but which way is best for your app? Especially when you want to anticipate its future growth. How do you create an app that's solid at the core, something that'll plant roots for future growth, but is still flexible enough to shift and evolve as you build, launch, and start bringing users on board? There is no way to build an app like that if you don't put down your roots. It's not going to withstand the pressures of the kind of scaling and expanding you'll want to do. You know, back when my business first started, I was just responding to people as they needed help on Bubble. I didn't have any systems or organization. I was just emailing people from my personal account and using a personal PayPal account. As more and more people came to me needing help, my business wasn't prepared for them. I didn't have a way to automatically schedule or accept payments. I didn't have an email client that would support me. Even the way I was doing things like video calls wasn't set up for growth. I got to a certain point where it felt like things were holding on by a thread, until finally I had to do a complete overhaul. And then all at once, I had to organize a booking feature, video conference system, payment platform, and a bunch of other features that would actually work together rather than individually, with me juggling in the background. I went back, overhauled my business, and put down strong roots that would support growth from there on out. I'm telling you, and I know you understand this concept, it's no different when building your app. All those features we just talked about with our hypothetical job board, those are real questions you need to be asking yourself. And I understand it might feel like a lot. How on earth are you supposed to have those answers? Well, to be honest, you're not. You won't find them anywhere, which is why we're here doing this right now. Because if you don't know the answers, you might find yourself a month, a few months, or even a year from now realizing I have to go back and rebuild everything. Now, of course, the big question is, how do you build that base, right? How do you set yourself up now so your app can run your business or run as a business later on? All right, let's talk about it. There are 7 specific things you need to know in order to put down roots, to lay a solid foundation for your app. First, you have to understand the anatomy of your app and how your front end, database, and workflows can and should work together, because it really depends on your particular app. There's not one straightforward answer. Next, you need to know what you can and can't do on Bubble. And that's a really common question because Bubble isn't the end-all, be-all solution. Yes, it provides an excellent framework to build your app on, but what if it doesn't support some of the specific features you need? What do you do and how do you solve that? You also need to know how to frame your app. What I mean by that is you need to know what features and functionality are even going to make up that base of your app. Where do you start? When you have 20 different features in mind for your app, what's at the bottom? And not only that, but how do you build out from there? How do you go from square 1 to 2, 3, 4, and so on? And this one might be even more confusing. Which tools and options should you be using on Bubble? I mean, just log into the dashboard and you'll see you have dozens and even hundreds of paths to choose. You absolutely have to know how to navigate this area, because if you don't, you could be facing a rebuild later on and a lot of time and effort wasted. When working on Bubble, there are a lot of times you'll find there's more than one way to build a single feature or functionality. But the thing is, depending on what you choose, it could affect how your app functions later on. You have to really analyze which option is best for you and your app. Which option will set you up for less work and less effort later on? Not only that, how do you actually put those tools to use? As someone without a technical background, jumping into app building, even when it's drag and drop style, can feel completely foreign. Even though we're dragging and dropping, Bubble is still a computer, and you can't just talk to it in plain everyday English. There's a highly specific way you have to tell Bubble to do what you want. And this is one of those things that can leave you pulling your hair out. I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten from people asking me whether they've gone wrong with certain parts of their app. And in reality, what they're doing usually makes sense in layman's terms. But it doesn't make sense to Bubble, who you have to talk to in a really specific way. And lastly, to build this solid core of your app, you have to set yourself up to be agile down the road. In application development terms, agile means flexible. And that's an important concept because things change throughout development. Maybe you get feedback that makes you change something. Maybe something breaks and you need a better solution. How do you set yourself up to handle that kind of agile or flexible development? If any of these things are resonating with you, you are not alone. I get hundreds and hundreds of emails asking these questions over and over again. And with each client or student I work with, I teach the same key principles that have helped people launch their apps, bring paying users on board, and even start up entirely new businesses in order to support themselves and their families. It doesn't matter what your app is for. The step-by-step process I'm teaching you answers all those questions we just went over. It's what gives you confidence. You can start something that could go on to change your entire life and business. I know we spent a lot of time going over the importance of building a solid foundation and putting down roots. And the reason is because this is the way forward. and I want that to stick in your mind. We've also left a lot of questions unanswered though. Before we dive into laying out the entire step-by-step strategy these videos are for, I want you to take some time to think about the current state of your app or app idea. Are you focusing on square 1? Or are you thinking about square 10 or 20? This can be a hard thing to stomach because it can make your ultimate goals feel like they're farther off than you want them to be. But I promise you, they'll be easier to reach if you build your app the right way from the start. Our next video is going to dive back into the 7 key things you need to know in order to build the foundation of your app. I'm going to answer those questions and give you relatable examples along the way, so you can see how they should fit into your own app building process. The goal is to leave you with clarity on the next steps you need to take with your app, so you're no longer left confused trying to push through development. We'll talk about all that and more in our next video, so I'll see you there.